Nebraska, and motivating Democratic leaning voters to vote. When we don't vote, when we don't get engaged, get involved, or stand up for what we believe in, we're effectively giving up our power. Action is the antidote. When we collaborate, work together, support each other, and our shared values, we can make our voices heard, make an impact, and inspire others to join the fight. Swing Left Nebraska offers you the information, actionable ideas, and tools you need to advocate for progressive legislation and to help elect Democratic candidates who will fight for the common good for all Nebraskans. Let's mobilize, let's take action, let's go. Welcome to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast, dedicated to promoting progressive values and political action in Nebraska. I'm Leah, a volunteer with Swing Left Nebraska, your host, and I am thrilled that you are joining me for today's episode. Cindy Maxwell-Ostdiek joins us to discuss the budget, criminal justice reform, updates on the anti-trans bill, and voter ID bill. So, whether you're a seasoned political activist or just getting started, we hope that this podcast will serve as a valuable resource for you. Let's do a show. Cindy, welcome back to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast. It is always a treat to have you on here to help us unpack everything unicameral. I wanted to start off by talking about an event that you attended, Disability Day of Action. Tell us about that.
And again, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you and that your work here is helping everybody to understand what's happening down in Lincoln and how important it is that we all take up our responsibility and we are in contact with our senators to help them make the best legislation for our state. And really have to tell you how heartened I was at the Capitol. It was really great to see people of all ages, all backgrounds, people of all abilities. And there were people that were very passionate about their rights. And I think it's important that all Nebraskans of conscience realize that the Nebraska legislature is going through the appropriations and budgeting process right now, and that is a moral document. And the tax dollars we invest in our communities and for our disabled neighbors is just so important. And I was glad that the Arc of Nebraska kind of reported afterwards that Governor Pillen did move a significant amount of money into the developmental disability funding. And they're going to have an amendment that will have implications for special education teaching, like incentives. There's more in there as well, but it just really is important that we make these investments. Nebraska right now has historic surplus these last few years, much of it due to COVID emergency funding, but also because our economy has been steady and doing better than some of the other states. And so we have a really good rainy day fund. This is the topic at the legislature right now. And I think most people realize that it is our responsibility that we take care of our neighbors.
Absolutely. And it sounds like, from what you said, with the amount of people who showed up, it really is showing that people are paying attention and they're coming to use their voice to fight for this very important topic.
Yes. And we just need to make sure that the legislature follows through and the governor's promise with this funding. And in fact, I would encourage everyone, if they haven't already called your senator, to get on the phone, leave a message even today while they're on their weekend break, and just let them know what your priorities are with the budget. Because the more they hear from everyday Nebraskans, I think that it will help them see that our priorities are not always with the special interests, with the donors, that type of thing.
Speaking of the budget, the Nebraska lawmakers unanimously voted in favor of LB 705 on Tuesday, which is a set of 23 bills related to education. The bill package is a priority for the State Education Committee and tackles various issues such as teacher shortage and mental health resources. The primary bill, LB 705, will provide over $24 million from state lottery funds to support education initiatives, including grants for college access and opportunities. One of the bills inside the package is LB 385, and that would provide up to $10 million in retention grants for teachers who continue to work in Nebraska. LB 385 is just one of the several bills that's inside that package to address the growing teacher shortage here in Nebraska. What are your thoughts on that?
I just think that Nebraska's public schools and private schools, our education system is one of the reasons our state is so amazing. And investing in our children, in our students, investing in our teachers is so important for our state's future. As far as tax dollars, I know none of us want to pay taxes, but we do all have a responsibility to our community. And one of the things that we really want to make sure is that we have our strong schools. And we've been hearing from teachers how difficult, just very difficult for that profession before COVID, right? This was happening. There was teacher shortage before COVID, and that just all accelerated. I know many teachers who have second jobs, and for some people, it just became necessary that they focus on their family. So
Yeah.
they've left the profession so that they can just work for salary where they don't need an extra job. And then I know people that, some of the policies and some of the things that we haven't been investing over the years have impacted whether they wanted to continue here in our schools. And then unfortunately, I know teachers who are also feeling their hearts are broken to have all of the commentary coming even from members of our state board of education and from members of the legislature about teachers and just the whole mis and disinformation about grooming and indoctrination and not trusting teachers regarding their curriculum and the books and things that they teach with their students. And so those types of things, that disrespect to the professionalism of this amazing group of people, it's all coming together, and it is something that we have an aging population in Nebraska anyway. So we need to be incenting people to go into education, and obviously anything we can do to help them stay. I think investing in our public education system is our priority. Again, I would say I want all schools to succeed, including our private schools. But the one bill that wasn't up this week that is so important regarding that is Senator Linehan's tax credit scheme for private schools. And hopefully people are still contacting their senators about that one too.
Yes, do not stop contacting your senators on that one. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of statistics. According to the Nebraska Department of Education, the number of unfilled teaching positions in the state has increased by almost 60% compared to the last year. So I don't know. I almost want to say that seems like a crisis. 60% is a
Mhm.
lot of unfilled positions. So we should
Yeah.
definitely keep our eyes and ears glued to where these bills end up going.
Yes. And again, I just want to shout out to our teachers and thank them for everything they do for all of our children in our state. The teachers are with them every day. And it is something that I just really am proud of our schools here in Nebraska. There was one bill that did come up that I wish it had been something that came through the committee process and had been easier, which was Senator McKinney's bill regarding suspensions. Did you follow that bill about prohibiting schools from suspending pre-K to second graders?
Yes, I remember that came up earlier in the session. Is that correct?
Yes, and they discussed it this week on the floor as well. We definitely need to be working to help these students and these families and these classrooms so that we can help them thrive. And there's obviously needs that are not being met when we're talking about suspension of second graders or suspensions of preschoolers. And it just disproportionately affects minority students in our state. And it is something that I think all of us should be paying attention to and asking our senators to work on.
Yes, I agree. That is something that we need to pay attention to as well. Moving on to some more budget related items, the Nebraska legislature convened on Thursday to discuss the state budget with two major topics on the agenda: a proposed canal and constructing a new prison. The budget bill proposes transferring funds from state cash reserves to finance a canal estimated at $630 million. The canal will transport water from South Platte River in Colorado to Nebraska. The bill would also allocate funds for a new prison, expected to cost around $335 million. The total cost of these plans is estimated at $1 billion. Despite attempts to halt or reduce costs, senators rejected these efforts. So, a lot going on here with criminal justice reform. What can you tell the audience about this?
Here's something that I hope people are remembering. We had opportunities in the past to address criminal justice reform here in our state. We in Nebraska have one of the most overcrowded prison systems in the whole country. And we have one of the worst ratios as far as when you consider the people in our state and whether someone is Black or Indigenous or a person of color or white, we disproportionately are incarcerating people of color, Black people and Indigenous here in Nebraska. And it's not right because there are facts that would show that these people are not actually committing crimes at greater rates. They're just being targeted with the actual police system. And then once you get into prison, we are not taking care to help people with giving them all the resources they need so that they can change their lives and come out into the community and really just come back in and get to work and re-enter public life. We're not giving quality education, life skills development, job readiness. There's times when people in our prison systems in Nebraska don't even have access to books because they're so overcrowded that it is difficult to do some of what they call the programming and the special programs that they have. These types of things make it hard for someone when they're trying to improve themselves, improve their education, their mental health. And it just does so much to help them with their success when they are released. One of the problems with our overcrowding is just the length of time people are staying in prison here in Nebraska. We have not been helping people to move through the system and be able to come out at a sooner point because of the programming, lack of it, and then the war on crime type of sentencing that had happened. There needs to be a look at that. And that's something Senator Lathrop, Senator McKinney, Senator Wayne, and others, Senator Kavanaugh, Senator Chambers. And you look back at some of the videos from last year and the year before and the year before that, this is something that has been an ongoing issue. And it's going to come to a head where full steam ahead. It seems like they want to build a new prison and it's going to be full.
Right.
Going to be full right away. And then what? We're going to build another one? It just doesn't make sense. And I'm sad that this week it didn't seem like the senators would all come together to try to work on this. I wish that they had moved forward with criminal justice reform last year, but this year could have been a fresh start. So it's just really discouraging to me. And I really recommend people go back onto the Nebraska legislature website. If you go into some of the information, and we could put it in the show notes, there is a report that was put together by all branches of Nebraska government last year in 2022. And those findings by the Nebraska Criminal Justice Reinvestment Working Group had amazing suggestions. I think if we had implemented them, we'd already be seeing some improvements. I ask people to call their senator and tell them that we want to fix this problem. We need to be looking at it in the long term. And even Senator Stinner last year during appropriations and budget debate, he talked about this at length last year as well.
And we want to give a big shout out to Senator Wayne and Senator McKinney, who have really led the way in fighting for criminal justice reform in our state.
Yeah, there's so many people that are trying to understand how we got to where we're at. One of the things that I think is important that everyone realize is that when you're electing your future legislator, say in all the odd number districts coming up next year, these should be questions you're asking. These should be questions that you're really asking and making sure that you understand that this is someone who will be serious to try to address these issues.
Yes, I agree. Now, a little bit of an update with LB 574 and 575. A growing number of businesses in Nebraska oppose those two bills that would affect transgender individuals. A letter was actually sent to state lawmakers and Governor Pillen, signed by 112 local companies and nonprofits, expressing their concerns about that bill, LB 574, which would ban gender affirming care for those under 19, and LB 75, which would regulate transgender students' access to facilities and participation in sports. The letter argued that these bills could exacerbate the state's labor shortage by discouraging out of state job seekers and businesses from moving to Nebraska. Notably, 319 companies, including major corporations like Apple, Google, and Pepsi, all signed on to the letter on Thursday. So that's a huge deal that these organizations and companies are coming together to make their voices heard. And I think it's important for these senators to hear this pushback. What are your thoughts?
I appreciate that these companies and organizations have come forward, and this leadership in the business and community is what we've needed. My background is in human resources and recruiting, and I have personally lost candidates to try to bring to Nebraska in the past because of our policies, either how it directly affected them or their family members. And I had appreciated during some of the testimony in the Judiciary Committee this session with one of the bills that Senator Hunt brought about discrimination in the workplace. Senator Day had hearing that day as well about our marriage, constitutional marriage amendment, trying to rectify that in our state too, because these do hold us back. Nebraska has more than 50,000 open positions in our state on any given. And so that means companies can't grow. They can't serve their customers. They can't implement some of their new initiatives. And if we can't help companies fill the positions they need to grow their businesses in Nebraska, they're going to go to other states. It's something that we really need to be paying more attention to. There are so many Nebraskans that maybe don't even understand that the large companies, we thank them so much for the business they bring to our state, but our state is actually driven by small businesses as well. The engine is small businesses in our state. And it is really difficult if we imagine that there's 50,000 open positions and that we're driving any one way. It just doesn't make sense. And these senators hopefully have listened to, like Senator Reapy when he was talking about 626. They've listened to the businesses, the nonprofits, and the other organizations trying to say we need to be inclusive. We have young people in our state that are maybe leaving to go to college that will come back. Or we have companies that are trying to recruit people that not only is it the employee for their company, but it would be their spouse that would be a talented person at one of the other organizations in our state. I really hope that they focus on this. I want to say that it was very disappointing to read the Omaha World Herald article from May 4th and the quote from Senator House, where she was basically saying that lawmakers should support her who support her bill should pay attention to which businesses signed on as opponents and when they decide where they should spend their money. It's very troubling to me that we would have a Nebraska state senator that would be calling on businesses to fail. I just really can't get my head around that. Ford has come out with, I don't know if there's which other news article, but I know there's been people that have shared some of the responses that they're receiving from her directly, like constituents that have contacted her about this issue. And she's doubled down on it and just basically said, I just think that when Senator Kauth is making these comments, we don't even know if she's only recommending that her colleagues not spend their personal money at these businesses. But is she also recommending that they not favor these companies or industries' legislative priorities? Really? This is something that affects all our lives, all our livelihoods. And I wish that the senators be working to represent all of us and not discriminate, hate in the first place, but in the second place, certainly not to be wishing ill on any companies that employ how many people, maybe even in her own district.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's really disgusting of her to say that kind of thing. want to elect officials who are going to fight for the common good for all Nebraskans.
Mhm.
So to wish any ill on any businesses, local businesses, or individuals is just, it's egregious. It's gross. As of today, May 7th, we still don't know when LB 574 is up for its third and final debate, do we?
No, 574 has been such a focal point at the legislature, and we are really getting down to the end of the session. We're on day 74 out of 90. And again, I like to remind everybody that the last few days of the session are reserved for non controversial bills because they would have wanted to complete any controversial bills with enough time that if they sent it to the governor and it was vetoed, they could override it. In my mind, really feel like we only have 85 days in the session for some bills instead of 90. And so if we're on day 74 right now, that only leaves 2 working weeks of hard and heavy work on some of these things. And that the legislature hasn't just moved on from 574 and moved on from this bill is just very disappointing. It's been toxic for our state. It's definitely, of course, affected the work that the legislature is able to get done. And I know that there's been a lot of workaround with these large kind of packages. They're not getting the full debate that we deserve here in Nebraska from our Nebraska legislators. The bill that you talk about with the education, when you have 15 or more bills all wrapped up into one, and they're not just technical bills, but actually substantial changes to policy or substantial changes to the priorities where our tax dollars are spent, I am disappointed that we're not getting more focus on that. And everyone likes to say that it's Senator Kavanaugh's fault or the people who are filibustering this discrimination, but it's really resting with Senator Kathleen Kaus and the other introducers of this bill and the senators that it sounds like some don't support the bill, but they just haven't come out to say, let's kill it. I really hope they see that we're clear to do that this week. When I was at the Capitol the other day, I ran into Senator Reeby in the hallway just on chance, and I thanked him for his vote to abstain, to vote on 626. And I told him, I said, I understand it was, I'm sure, a very hard decision. He did not do it lightly. And I know that he truly would like to restrict for abortion further in our state than it is right now, even though all the medical professionals are telling us where we currently restrict what's appropriate. But I also thanked him. I said, we have so many people in our state who are relying on the legislators to take leadership and follow science, to listen to the professionals, listen to the people who are experts in this area. And I said, I hope that he does that on 574 as well. I'm hoping he's listening to the medical community and these businesses. And I hope other senators are too. But they'll vote no.
Here is to hoping my fingers, my toes, my eyes, my ears, my hair, everything is crossed. That they are listening to the people of Nebraska and
Right.
to the doctors and the scientists.
And these families are telling us that this is what is the best for their child. And we need to trust these parents and how they're accessing this healthcare for their children.
Absolutely. So, pivoting a little bit, update on LB 535, the voting ID voter suppression bill. The Nebraska legislator is getting closer to finalizing a compromise that aims to find a middle ground between two opposing amendments regarding the implementation of voter ID. This proposed bill would not include any extra measures to verify voter citizenship status. Salma told Nebraska Public Media on Friday that the proposal would allow the use of state ID cards, student ID cards from colleges and universities, and IDs from nursing homes. Expired IDs would also be allowed in accordance with case law. An earlier proposal would have required the IDs to be current. She also told them that the proposal would allow witnesses to sign and vouch that they had seen a person's voter ID after a person had filled out their mail in ballot and placed it inside an envelope to protect ballot secrecies. but witnesses would put themselves at legal risk if they lied. I do like that they are accepting more IDs. I like that they are going to accept expired IDs because that was going to be a huge issue. But it still feels like this is a voter suppression bill despite some of the compromises. What do you think?
I follow this very closely. I'm someone who is very civic minded and I try to encourage everyone to become involved with their elected officials and the election process so that we can have people who are representing all of our lives and our livelihoods. And it's sad to me that there was so much misinformation about this and the whole voter ID issue was politicized because we do not have voter fraud in Nebraska. First, I just want to state that, and that has been confirmed by the Secretary of State. This has not been an issue. And so, this voter ID initiative is something, though, that the Nebraska community, all the voters passed. So, the legislature is charged with implementing it. And I appreciate that the senators have been working hard to try to find a way to do this so that we're not disenfranchising more people than will be from this bill. But I'm very sad that there's going to be even one voter who will have a hard time voting. I wanted to say one thing about voting by mail because this is something that Nebraskans have been doing more and more over the years. And in fact, we had our highest turnouts in voting here in our state during COVID because vote by mail ballots were sent to full registered voters. And I think a lot of people understood how convenient it was. It was safe, obviously, during COVID, but it was convenient to vote from their kitchen table and to take their time and not worry like something coming up on the day of the election that they might not be able to get to the polls. In fact, there are certain counties in Nebraska that vote by mail exclusively already, and they have the highest turnouts in those counties than all of the others in Nebraska. So this is something that a lot of Nebraskans really do appreciate and are proud of. And it's hard to find the words to describe how offended I am that Senator Slama is saying that all of us would need to have our vote by mail ballots notarized or have someone witness our votes. It's just offensive to me because I know Nebraskans, just the, by and large, everyone, they're saying we do not have fraud in our state. And to say that we would all need to be inspected when we're voting to put our ballot in the mail is just something that just really rubs me the wrong way. It is going to be difficult for some people because if you aren't living with someone who can witness your vote by mail ballot, then you have to find someone who will, or to go out and find a notary, which is very difficult for some people based on their work schedule or just even their mobility or finding someone that would be able to do it conveniently. So I hope the senators are very thoughtful about this. I'm wondering if the debate might even come up this week. I don't know. It's not on the agenda for tomorrow anyway. But I just really think that Nebraskans don't want the legislature to disenfranchise more people from voting.
Yeah, I agree. It will be interesting how this all turns out. And I've just been thinking about the counties that are all vote by mail and how this is going to impact them and their vote. It's just been something that's been heavy on my mind about what this is going to do. But I agree. I really do hope that the senators do the right thing when it comes
Mhm.
to this because we want everybody in Nebraska to be able to have an opportunity to use their voice at the ballot with as little barriers as possible.
In fact, our Constitution used to say no barriers, right? That you're
Mhm.
eligible to vote. And I think it's important that people understand what kind of policy we could have had in our state, too. There are many people that have been working for years in the Nebraska legislature to try to expand voting so that we could have more participation in our elections. In fact, automated voter registration is something that had come to the legislature more than once that would be where you go and you get your driver's license or other points where you're interacting with our government, that you could actually also register to vote at the same time and have your identity verified and all the things that happen when you register. We could be expanding vote by mail. We could make sure that the lists in every county are permanent when someone puts their name on the list that they want to vote by mail. It's unfortunate that in Sarpy County, the list for people to vote by mail actually stopped after COVID. And there were a lot of people that were waiting for their full postcard to say it's time to request your ballot. We could have expanded vote by mail by including postage paid envelopes. And instead of making people put a stamp on it or drive it to a secure drop box, that they could just put it back in the mail, have the post office take care of it, and not need to worry about that stamp. There are many things that we could be doing to increase voter participation. And it is just really very sad to me as a civic minded person. My civic minded heart is just sad to see this initiative. But if they're going to implement these laws, I hope that they will actually listen and not make it harder. It's just difficult for people who are struggling in working several jobs, or when we talk about people, especially when we have voters in neighborhoods that are Black, Indigenous, people of color, and just really these types of barriers are not good for our state.
Yes, I agree. Sydney, as we wind down this episode, is there any final thoughts that you have for our incredible audience?
I would just really say that as you're going to graduations this month, I actually had talked with a young person recently who is working to make sure that their classmates are registered. I was really inspired by their pride in being a voter and trying to help their classmates and other students to realize how important this is. And it made me think, okay, we're all going to graduations, we're getting the invitations in the mail. Why don't we make sure that every young person that we're talking with is either registered to vote if they're 18, or that they are registering ahead, because you can do that in advance of your 18th birthday, and making sure that they're talking with their friends. That's my little idea. I wondered if maybe more people would help get some of our young Nebraskans involved and engaged in this process.
I think that is a perfect way to end this episode. Get the youngins involved, get the youngins engaged, and not just youngins, anybody in your life who isn't registered.
Yeah, and I think young people are very involved. I'm seeing so much increased participation at the Capitol. It was disappointing this year when we had people turned away to testify, but I was very heartened to see how many people have been paying attention, getting in touch with their senator, and all the things. But I know there's still some people that aren't. So, yeah, anything we can do to try to reach all of our neighbors about this.
Sydney, I want to express my gratitude for your valuable contributions. Your efforts in gathering insights from senators and keenly observing the proceedings on the unicameral floor are commendable. Your updates are greatly appreciated and keep our audience well informed. Thank you for being a reliable source of information. I look forward to connecting with you next week. I wanted to give you an update on Lincoln's election that took place last Tuesday on May 2nd. The Nebraska Democratic Party issued the following statement regarding the Lincoln general election results. Lincoln voters soundly rejected the MAGA Republicans and millions dumped into the race by the Peed and Ricketts families. Nebraskans do not want our elections bought by millionaires, nor do they want constant lies told by the Republican Party. The elections were won tonight because Mayor Larion and her fellow Democrats put forward their positive ideas to continue building a welcoming Lincoln for all. So, a big congratulations to Mayor Larion, James Michael Bowers, Lincoln City Council District 1, Justin Carlson, Lincoln City Council District 3, Brody Weber, Lincoln City Council District 4, Piyush Sarivazatov, Lincoln Public Schools Board District 2, Annie Momgard, Lincoln Public Schools Board District 4, and Bob Rayner, who ran nonpartisan Lincoln Public Schools Board District 6. Woo-hoo! This summer, the Sarpy County Democrats are trying to engage and register young voters. You can lend a helping hand by joining Sarpy Dems for a walk at the Salute to Summer Parade on May 27th at 12 p.m. or spend some time at our community booth to chat with your neighbors and register voters until 10 p.m. You can stick around and enjoy the rest of the festivities, which include a cookout, food trucks, a beer garden, music, wildlife encounters, a magic show, a talent show, fireworks, and so much more. Plus, volunteers will receive a t shirt as a token of appreciation. I will leave the link for more information and for you to sign up in the show notes. Thank you for listening to the Swing Left Nebraska podcast, dedicated to promoting progressive values and political action in our state. We hope these conversations have inspired you to get involved in your community and make a difference. Remember, change starts with us. By staying informed, engaged, and active, we can work together to create a more equitable and just society for all Nebraskans. Let's mobilize. Let's take action. Let's go.
Ready, set, go.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. 7 people are dead,